Good evening, and thank you for joining this webinar from Wiltshire Council about the potential road route options that could serve a new development to the south and east of Chippenham, which we are calling the Future Chippenham project. My name is Richard Walters and I'm the head of Wiltshire Council's Major Projects and Enabling Service, and I will be chairing the webinar this evening. I hope that you will forgive the rather impersonal nature of this form of consultation event, which of course is imposed upon us by the pandemic. We're keen to reach as many people as possible with our consultations, even in these difficult times, and so we hope the webinars enable you to access further information on this important project for Chippenham. If you wish to see closed captions of speakers' words, then please click on the CC button on the bottom right of the screen, and they should appear after 30 seconds or so. If you're having any technical problems, please close Teams or your browser, reopen it and click on the meeting link again. Other problems may be down to your home internet connection. If you're hearing an echo, it may be that you have this event open in 2 or more windows. The event will take form of a presentation from our panelists, who will explain a little bit about the wider context of the Future Chippenham project and the details about the 3 potential road options that we are currently consulting upon. This will be followed by a question and answer session. The presentation should take around 40 minutes with a further 20 minutes or so for Q&A. On our panel today are Simon Hendy from Wiltshire Council and Jamie Adkins and Thomas Tremlett from Atkins Global. Simon is Wiltshire Council's Director of Housing and Commercial Development and will be presenting a brief overview of the project, setting the wider context of the 3 road options that we are currently consulting on. Jamie is a senior engineer and Tom is a senior environmental consultant at Atkins Global, who have been appointed as consultants working on behalf of the council on this project, and will be presenting a detailed overview of the road route options. Thanks to those of you who've already submitted questions in advance, I will be putting these to the panelists in the questions and answers session, where the issues raised have not already been dealt with in the presentation. In addition to the presentation team, there are also subject experts on the call who I will be directing questions to where appropriate. There's also an opportunity for you to raise questions during the presentation using the Q&A panel in this webinar that should be located on one side of your screen. For some of you, the Q&A panel may be beneath the slides and you'll need to scroll down to see it. If you cannot see the Q&A panel, you may need to click on the icon of 2 overlapping speech bubbles to open this panel. If possible, we may try to answer some of your questions in writing through the Q&A panel, so do please keep an eye on this. Given the volume of questions that we've already received, it is likely that we will not be able to answer them all within the time allotted today. With this in mind, we will be hosting an additional webinar on Saturday, the 20th of February at 11 AM, which will focus more time on answering your questions. Details about how to book this additional webinar will be published on the consultation website tomorrow. All questions submitted are recorded and written responses will be provided after this session, along with the copy of the presentation slides. These will be emailed out to all of those who registered to attend this webinar. A video recording of the webinar will also be made available on the Council's YouTube channel. Lastly, we would very much encourage everyone to actively take part in this consultation and give us your feedback in writing on the road route options. If you can, please help us to spread the word about this consultation and encourage others you know who may be interested to give us their feedback too. The Future Chippenham team and customer services are happy to provide hard copies of the consultation materials to those people who may not have digital access. A link to the consultation website is shown on this slide, along with the email address and telephone number to contact the Council's customer services team. Paper copies can also be collected from the reception desk at the Council's Monkton Park office. The consultation is currently live and runs until 5 PM on Friday, the 12th of March. So that's it from me for now, and I'm going to hand over to Simon Hendy for the first part of this presentation.
Thanks very much, Richard. And the first important thing we need to state is that currently there are 2 consultations taking place. The first is that Wiltshire Council's local planning authority is consulting on its local plan, and that local plan review considers the level of growth in the town around Chippenham through to 2036, including where new homes could be allocated. And that's entirely separate from the consultation that we're presenting this evening, which is about possible road routes should development come forward. If a new distributor route were to come forward as subject of that of local plan review, then it would be subject to a planning application, and more information about that separate local plan review can be found on the link at the bottom of that slide, and we'd encourage people to take part in that consultation just as we would taking part in this consultation as well. Just in terms of background information, so Chippenham has significant potential for economic growth, but further housing growth around Chippenham beyond that allocated in the Chippenham site allocation plan cannot be delivered without investing in new road links. Now, evidence suggests that one of the best options to deliver the vision for a sustainable future could be through the building of a new road to relieve through traffic and unlock potential development sites. Now, Wiltshire Council has been awarded a grant of £75 million from the government under the Housing Infrastructure Fund, which could support the delivery of a new distributor road to the east and south of Chippenham, as well as making improvements to junction 17 on the M4. By 2046, such a road could unite to sustainable new communities and green spaces, which could include up to 7,500 homes and 1 million square feet of employment space. The delivery of the road and associated housing and infrastructure are predicated on sites being allocated as part of the local plan review process, as I've already mentioned. If that does not happen, then the delivery of the road and the drawdown of that £75 million funding would be at risk. So this evening we're consulting on 3 options for the location of the road to the east and south of Chippenham, along with 2 road link options. A planning application will be made for a preferred route if sufficient progress on the allocations have been made through the local plan review. We've made representations towards that local plan review, but those representations will be considered and tested by the local planning authority in exactly the same way as any other representations from any other interested parties. Okay, I shall now hand over to Jamie and Tom from Atkins to go through the detail of the road route options.
Thank you, Simon. So the Future Chippenham Road Route Options Assessment identifies the need for the Future Chippenham Distributor Road, defines scheme objectives, and assesses route options in terms of environmental impact, deliverability, transport network impacts, and value for money to identify the most appropriate route for the road. The scheme extents for the Future Chippenham Distributor Road options connect from the A350 Lackham Roundabout or the B4528 just north of Lackham Roundabout, south of Chippenham, and join the Rawlings Green development site to the northeast of Chippenham. The distributor road continues further north through Rawlings Green, over the Great Western Rail Line, along Parsonage Way and past Birds Marsh, and connects to the A350 at Malmsey Roundabout north of Chippenham. This length of road from Rawlings Green to Malmsey Roundabout is delivered by other developers. The distributor road options presented for public consultation runs through or around the perimeter of the residential area identified in the local plan review, shown on this plan in yellow. The options assessment process is split into 4 different stages. The first stage was undertaken for the HIF bid and identified that the preferred option to unlock development growth was the full Eastern Distributor Road. During this assessment, 3 strategic objectives were developed. The first objective is to enable housing development by unlocking land. The second strategic objective is to improve traffic congestion, ensuring the transport network has capacity to accommodate housing growth. And the third strategic objective is to provide good transport connectivity for sustainable transport between new and existing developments. The second part of the options assessment process is what we are presenting today. And there is, of course, further information available on the consultation webpage. And following public consultation on the distributor road options, there will be an update to the options assessment to consider feedback from public consultation, feedback from land discussions and agreements, supply chain marketing, and an update to the environmental case following field surveys. And following the update and announcement of a preferred route in the summer of this year, the preferred route will be submitted for a planning application as the fourth stage. We've split the road assessment options up into 5 zones to provide appropriate focus and limits for option comparison. The zone boundaries are defined by existing transport networks, land and developer boundaries, and locations of future development centres. Each stage of the option sifting process takes forward distributor routes within each zone, meeting the assessment criteria to pass to the next stage. Options for a road linking a distributor road to Pewsham Way are also assessed and assessed separately from the zones. Options were generated considering the following parameters: completion of a full eastern distributor road route to ease transport congestion, consider sustainable transport connectivity, provide flexibility for landowner discussions, consider developers' plans and planning conditions, and also to consider physical and environmental constraints. The first SIFT options are shown on this plan. 6 route options for the distributor road and 4 route options for the link road to Pewsham Way were generated for the first option SIFT. These were assessed against the strategic scheme objectives, physical and environmental and land constraints to ensure that any options presented for public consultation are deliverable. Further information on the sifting at this stage is available on the public consultation webpage. So the second SIFT options that we are looking at in more detail, we have 3 distributor road options. Option A is the outer route shown in purple on this plan, is 8.3 kilometres long and follows the outer edge of the local plan review development area. It's likely to operate more like a traditional ring road. Option B, which is the green route on this plan, runs through the local plan development area and is 7.4 kilometres long. And option C, which is the inner route, also runs through the local plan review development area. As I said, it's 7.3 kilometres long. All road options are low speed and they are single 2-way carriageways. All road options also include 2 long bridge viaducts, one in the south over the River Avon and one in the northeast of the scheme over the River Avon. And they also include bridges over the Wilton Barts Canal. In terms of the assessment zone, Zone 5, all road options follow the route of the Rawlings Green Distributor Road, so that doesn't have any further impact on the options assessment, although it was included in the cost estimate and also included in the HIF grant. The second SIFT Pewsham Link Road options include a link from the Distributor Road to Pewsham Way connecting at Canal Roundabout, which is Pewsham Link option 1, and Pewsham Link option 3 from the Distributor Road to Pewsham Way at a point 150 metres east of Forest Lane. There is a video available on the public consultation webpage that I won't click now, but it is available to view, and it provides a fly-through of each route option and gives you some geographical locations to give a good representation of what may be developed and delivered. So we have developed some cross sections for the scheme to inform the scheme cost estimates. On the screen at the moment is the rural cross section, where we wouldn't expect to have adjacent land developed. All cross sections for the scheme include pedestrian and cycle networks. They include bus networks, sustainable drainage and landscape planting. The urban residential cross-section includes pedestrian access from houses directly onto the road route corridor, and also includes landscape planting, which is positioned close to the road to narrow the road corridor and mitigate excessive traffic speed. The third cross section that we're showing today is a potential for a urban centre, and this particular one considers strategic cycle networks where forecast cycle flows are predicted to be higher through residential centres, and this has separate footways to the cycleways. In terms of assessment methodology, there are 4 assessment cases. The strategic case provides a qualitative assessment against the strategic objectives of the scheme that I've mentioned previously. All options meet the objectives 1 and 3, which are to enable the quantum of development outlined in the HIF bid and to mitigate traffic congestion. Although there are clear differences in connectivity due to the geographical location of each option in relation to existing and future developments, and also in relation to public rights-of-way networks. So this is what really influences the difference in assessment scoring. There is a connectivity plan on the web page, which includes 10-minute walking zones for reference. The delivery case at this stage doesn't have a large difference between the options, although, as I've mentioned previously, land agreements and land discussions are ongoing, and obviously we're undertaking the public consultation, so those 2 elements will feed back into an update to the delivery case. The environmental case, we've undertaken a preliminary environmental options assessment, which is based on available desktop data. Factors influencing the assessment scoring for this include geographical proximity of the road options to environmental features, and also the scale of proposed road and bridge infrastructure. The financial case, we've undertaken a cost estimate for each road route option within each zone and compared them. The following slides provide a summary of key differences between the distributor road options and the Pewsham Link Road options. And our Future Chippenham Environmental Manager, Tom Tremlett, will be supporting us by providing environmental comparisons and also financial comparisons. So Zone 1, in terms of connectivity, the inner route option C crosses 2 public rights of way that connect up through Rowden Park and into the town centre. They also continue south towards Lackham College and towards Laycock. Due to its geographical location closer to emerging developments at South Chippenham and existing developments further north into Rowden Park and the town centre, option C is preferred in terms of connectivity.
So yeah, thanks, Jamie. So as far as the environmental assessment was undertaken, as Jamie's already mentioned, there's preliminary environmental assessment of the options undertaken, which is generally on desk study information, although it was supported by a phase 1 habitat survey across the site, covering the options as well as sort of a detailed landscape assessment in respect to views as well. In respect of this zone, the assessment generally found the sort of landscape, cultural heritage, water environment, and sort of carbon cost during construction were the key factors from environment. So from a landscape perspective, option B and C were sort of aligned far lower in the landscape than option A, which does mean it would sort of option A would remain more visible in views, sort of even when you apply sort of mounding type mitigation as well as sort of vegetation screening. Between the two, between B and C, option B was preferred because it follows sort of a lower alignment than option C, which option C kind of connects into a sort of high ridge line between Lower Lodge Farm and the sewage treatment works, which option B avoids, and option B would be easier to screen from sort of existing viewpoints. In respect to cultural heritage, as you can see on the large sort of pink area or beige area, sort of the north of this plan, you've got the conservation area for Rowden Park, and sort of on the triangular point of the zone marking, you can see Rowden Manor and the scheduled monument and listed buildings in that location. So we are quite far away from that location, but we are still within relative proximity of the conservation area. And option C would be partly visible from that conservation area. So therefore, option B was preferred to option C because option B also is further away from the listed buildings at Showell Farm. Option A is probably better than option C in heritage terms, but is worse than option B because it is sort of closer to Laycock and also the conservation area in Laycock and also Lackham College to the south there. As you can kind of see from the image, the floodplain which is shown on this plan, it gets wider as you move southwards. Now, our assumption at this stage is that we would be putting a viaduct across the entire floodplain to prevent any sort of further effect on flooding elsewhere, although further modelling will inform of whether that is necessary or not. At this stage, that means that option A needs a far longer floodplain, far longer viaduct, of 468 metres compared to a 336 metre viaduct for option C. So that has a relatively large impact on what the likely carbon emissions are during construction. Concrete is an incredibly carbon dense product, and the likely concrete requirements for that viaduct mean option A would be likely to be far higher in carbon emission cost during construction than option C. Overall, our environment best option was option B because of the beneficial landscape and cultural heritage impacts, followed by option C, with option A the least preferred from an environment perspective. Option A, the least preferred from an environment perspective. When it came to the financial case, sort of a similar note really. The larger viaduct does make option A more expensive. It is also a significantly longer route through the area, so you can see sort of it has to sort of bend around after crossing the Avon. Whilst option C was the cheapest option when considering it without the Pewsham link, which is shown on this plan, and that is because of the shorter viaduct also.
So in zone 2, in terms of connectivity, there are existing public rights of way that are crossed that connect up into Pewsham via Forest Lane and east towards the A4. Option C is the better fit as it's closer to the existing development at Pewsham and is actually within a 10-minute walking zone. Although options B and A do still connect via the public rights of way, but are just geographically that much further away.
So yeah, as far as environment's concerned, option B or C are kind of preferred from an environment perspective in this zone, and there's not an awful lot between them. The key reason for that is possibly again landscape effect really. Option A is sort of more visible to existing viewpoints from Lackham College and also from public rights of way to the south, and from sort of approach views on the A4, which the options B and C would be able to mitigate more suitably with sort of minor mounding works and also vegetation screening as appropriate. Option B and C were scored slightly lower from a cultural heritage perspective than option A, where previous sort of investigations have found archaeological interest at the site in that area adjacent to Forest Farm, which Jamie's pointing out for us, whilst option A, there has never been sort of previous investigations along the route, so it might be that that would actually have similar sort of archaeological interest, but we're unable to define that at this stage. In respect of the financial case, option C or B both have an optional bridge over the proposed sort of reconstruction of the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal, as Jamie's pointing out there in the location. Whilst option A does require a bridge over the sort of the over Pewsham locks that are recently being renovated or being upgraded. So that sort of despite the sort of, if you apply all the bridges in, you still find that option C is the cheapest option in this zone, and that's largely driven by the fact that it follows a lower alignment, follows a shorter alignment than the other options in this zone.
So in zone 3, all options run from the A4 up border the northern edge along the National Cycle Network 403. So they do also cross. Well, option C crosses the route along Hardens Lane as well. So in terms of proximity to both Monkton Park and Pewsham, option C is geographically better located, although all options, particularly via the National Cycle Network, would connect back towards the town centre and would provide that connectivity, but option C is preferred because it's closer.
So from an environment perspective, option B was the preferred in this zone. The reasoning for which the key sort of point again is potential landscape impact from that outer route. Option A will remain quite visible from approach views, and it also lies on sort of the wrong side of a sort of hillock where Jamie's sort of pointing out there, which would be very hard to mitigate, and it would likely just remain sort of present in those views, despite mounding and vegetation type of screening. Option B and C in the same note sort of lie almost in a bowl, which sort of do screen them naturally quite well from existing viewpoints. There would be some sort of views from Monkton Park. However, because of the way the landscape is in the existing environment, it would be screened quite simply using visual screening and mounding. So it has slightly more capacity for that to work in that location. In respect of option C is less preferred than option B for two main reasons. Whilst the north side of the scheme is largely similar, the south side of option C in this zone do impact sort of Stanley Park playing fields, where they would reduce the amount of playing field available because of the fact that the route runs through the corner of them, and also the route in this location crosses straight through a pond that has historical records of great crested newts. Whilst these effects are sort of mitigatable through the provision of additional playing fields or the provision of additional ponds for great crested newts and similar, option B is still preferred on the basis that avoidance is preferable to compensation in a mitigation hierarchy. As far as cost goes for the scheme, option B and C do avoid the requirement to construct another bridge over the proposed, it's partly existing, but the proposed realignment of the Wiltshire and Berkshire Canal, where Jamie's sort of pointing out here. Obviously, another bridge that does clearly have an impact on the carbon cost as well of option A. But yeah, on cost, that does make option A more expensive than B and C, and that's combined with the fact that option A needs a sort of additional road to link back into the housing shown in the local plan, or the potential housing area shown in the local plan, and the need for that sort of extra link road in would make option A more expensive than options B and C.
So in zone 4, which is bordered by the National Cycle Network, and then across the river into Rawlins Green. There are public rights of way that extend out to Tiverton Lucas and then also to the east to other villages. Again, it's the same story really. Option C is closer, so provides better connectivity, mainly via the National Cycle Network, but also via Hardens Lane back into Pewsham and then into Monkton Park and onwards into the town centre.
So from an environment perspective, option C is the preferred in this zone. So you see the sort of flood zones laid out there. So they all sort of have a similar impact on the water environment. But the key topic again in this zone is landscape. As a general rule, the land sort of slopes down from the National Cycleway down towards the River Marden, which is running east west across the scheme in this location. Now there are actually two sort of localized hillocks, one just south of Newley's Farm and one where you can see sort of the option A kind of bends around the outside of in that location there. Now I guess what we've found is that it's a very open landscape, and with the conservation area to the north at Tiverton Lucas, the option A would have a significant impact on landscape and sort of on landscape character and on local views. It would be very hard to mitigate it because of the existing landscape is so open, and the current sort of hedgerows and similar in this zone are sort of relatively poor or low lying. So in that respect, it would be difficult to screen the views and maintain the existing landscape character. Option B, similarly, whilst obviously having a much smaller percentage of area going through this zone, is visible, does remain visible in views from the north and from the west, from the north and east, sorry, and so therefore is the sort of second preferred option, with the preferred option being option C from a landscape perspective, which manages to sort of bend around the back of that sort of localised hillock south of Newley's Farm and avoid impacting those views to the east to the same extent before sort of all joining the same route across the Avon. I think one thing to consider as well is previous investigations have been undertaken through much of this area by previous developers, and what it's identified is sort of a large amount of ridge and furrow earthworks, which are relatively common in this area, but option A and option B both impact those in a larger extent, partly because they have a larger sort of route through this zone. Clearly, from a carbon standpoint, the much longer length of option A makes this a less sort of worse from a greenhouse gas emissions during construction than option C. When it comes to financial case, they all have the same viaduct over the Avon, so that's sort of similar price wise, but option A is more expensive on the basis as a longer route, followed by option B, with option C being the preferred from a financial case perspective.
So the Pewsham Link road options, option 1, which connects into Canal Roundabout, is actually the best in terms of connectivity. It is slightly closer to the town centre than option 3, although option 3 does also provide good connectivity via public rights of way, via Forest Lane and other routes adjacent to Pewsham Way.
Yeah, and from an environment perspective, option 1, as you can see there, has to cross a watercourse there south of Pewsham Way, which actually then crosses underneath Pewsham Way before option 4. So option 3 doesn't need to cross it. The impact of that is it's quite steeply banked as well, and it does need a sort of a pretty decent structure to cross the watercourse, and that was both drive up sort of the carbon cost as well as the actual cost of the of that option. Option 1 also, because of sort of the well-developed hedgerows you can kind of see there, and the fact that connects into Mortimer's Wood to the west, would potentially have a larger effect on on local biodiversity, as well as the fact that obviously it's an additional watercourse crossing and could be associated with potential waterfall and otter impacts. Although surveys have not been undertaken at this stage. When it comes to cost, as I sort of illustrated a second ago, option 3 is preferred to option 1 because it's a cheaper option on the basis that it doesn't have that crossing of that minor watercourse there.
So in terms of the overall options assessment scoring summary, this table presents each distributor road option for each zone and each Pewsham link against the assessment cases. Overall, the best fit in sorry, it's gone on one too many there. Overall, the best fit is option C in zone 1. It's option B or C in zone 2, option B or C in zone 3, and option C in zone 4. And in terms of Pewsham links, option 3 is preferred, even though it's not as well connected. It has lower potential impact on the environment and has a lower delivery cost, so on balance is a better fit. What we've presented on the next slide is a refined best fit road option. So the option that's presented on this slide enables development, mitigates traffic congestion, is well connected, has the lowest environmental impact and provides the highest value for money. You'll see that in this particular area in zone 3, as Tom summarised earlier, option C so it's predominantly the route does follow option C, but in this particular area between the A4 and Stanley Lane, the southern section of this route actually follows option B from the A4 to Stanley Lane, and then connects to option C from Stanley Lane to the National Cycle Network. So this mitigates the issues at Stanley Park and the impact on great crested newts. So the next steps for options assessment. Obviously, we welcome feedback from the public as part of this consultation, so that will be analysed. We will also continue landowner discussions. There will be a supply chain marketing event. Environmental field surveys and flood modelling will progress, and we will update cost estimates for the route options. And we will also update the options assessment to following that extra data to confirm the preferred route, which will be announced in the summer of 2021. So if I hand back to Richard or Simon.
It's me. Thank you, Jamie, and thanks, Tom and Simon as well, for your presentations. This slide is just a reminder that you can keep up to date on the progress of the Future Chippenham project by signing up to receive our new Future Chippenham newsletter, and you can subscribe through the Future Chippenham webpage, which is up there on the slide. So we're now turning to the Q&A part of the evening. We've got around 20 minutes or so left. I've got an awful lot of questions that have come in. I can see in the live chat, as well as questions that quite a number of the questions that have come in prior that are very similar in many respects to those coming in. So there are some kind of themes emerging. So I'm going to read the questions out and then ask one of my colleagues to answer them. So quite a few questions have come up about the whole question of the climate emergency. There are a couple here that are similar themes, so I'll read them out and then ask my colleague Simon Hendy to respond. So the question is, Wiltshire Council has declared that we are in a climate emergency. Why do the strategic objectives for this new road and development not acknowledge this as the top consideration? And a similar theme about Houses the Square with Wiltshire Council's announcing a climate emergency last year. So I wonder, Simon, if you wouldn't mind providing an answer to that very important question.
Yes, thanks, Richard. As people probably know, the council has set a very ambitious target of becoming carbon neutral county by 2030. And to achieve carbon neutrality, the council will, amongst other things, need to account for carbon in its development plans. Council will also look at ways of delivering new development with reduced carbon emissions and will investigate offsetting any residual carbon emissions so that net input into the atmosphere as close to zero carbon emissions as possible can be achieved. People have probably seen from the presentation tonight, the carbon impact and environmental impact has been taken into account and is one of the key considerations has been set out by Tom. A programme such as Future Chippenham will need to demonstrate its commitment to policies in the local plan and how they've been met in any of the planning applications that it makes. So hopefully that gives some sort of idea of how this programme will address that very important issue.
Thanks, Simon. And there's another question which I'll probably direct towards Tom, around what assessment's been made of the total increase in carbon emissions over, say, the next 10 years as a result of this new road. And the questioner goes on to say not just the embedded emissions of the road building, but also the increased traffic and road use. I wonder whether, Tom, whether you might be able to give a response to that.
Yeah, sure. So at this stage, no quantified assessment of operational carbon has been undertaken. An assessment comparing the options in respect of their potential carbon emissions was undertaken for the PAOR. That's just using sort of experience and understanding that it's quite simple to make a comparison assessment at this stage, but undertaking a quantified assessment would require significant traffic modelling, which we didn't have for each of the options. So we've undertaken a qualitative assessment essentially, which sort of found that the shorter option would be most efficient from a carbon perspective. But I understand that's not quantified at this stage. As the scheme progresses towards the planning permission, once we've we've selected a preferred route, the EIA process will be required to provide a quantification of that of those carbon emissions as part of the environmental impact assessment process.
That's great. Tom, can you just remind people what the PAOR actually stands for?
Apologies. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sucker for acronyms. So we did a preliminary environmental assessment of options. So the assessment of options we did to inform this this process.
Thanks, Tom. That's great. The next question is one that I'm going to direct, I think, to my colleague Dave Milton, who's the master planning subject lead for the Future Chippenham programme. And it's aren't these proposals simply business as usual? How do these options plan for a future that reduces car dependency and commuting given the pandemic and the climate emergency? I wonder, Dave, whether you'd be able to give a response to that.
Yes, thanks, Richard. It's this fundamentally it's been backed by government. It could be a step change in delivery of housing, and it could allow an holistic approach to Chippenham. And one of the overriding sort of objectives is to try and improve the self-containment of Chippenham, so actually it stays a viable and vibrant town in its own right moving forward, so people can work and live and meet their service needs without a need to travel. That's the overarching principle of trying to plan for sustainable development. It's about delivering a critical mass. This road could potentially unlock development which could meet Chippenham's housing and job needs well into the future.
Okay, thank you for that, Dave. The next question that I've got on my list relates to a series of questions that have come up a lot in the meeting chat as well, the meeting Q&A, and they're essentially around the consultation process, and I'll read the question out. So, will the consultation consider the option of not building a new road and looking for more innovative and future-facing options to meet the town's need whilst reducing carbon emissions? And another similar question, so I'll pose them and then invite colleagues to answer, is in responses to the consultation form, we were asked to give our preference on the 3 road options, Many people strongly oppose the road altogether, so why wasn't an option of no road included? Any statistics compiled as a result of these consultation answers will be skewed because of this. So it's a really important question, and I'm going to put that one to my colleague Simon Hendy.
Yes, thanks, Richard. And this question's come up quite a few times in relation to the meetings we've been having with town and parish councils. Just to make it really clear, we're consulting on possible road routes if a road is needed to support development proposed in the local plan. And we accept that a lot of people may not want to see the development or the level of development that would necessitate the need for that new distributor road. And if that is the case, there are two ways in which they can register their objection, either via this consultation, but also via the local plan review consultation. We've provided the link to the local plan review consultation in the presentation this evening. Just in terms of how they can specifically register their objection as part of this consultation, on the website link that we've given, it provides the link to the consultation survey form. On that form, they are not required to give their views on options around the road. They can move straight to saying other on question number 5, and then question number 6 provides free text option for them to register their objections and why they object, and that will all be captured as part of the consultation that we will be reporting on. Over and above that, on that website, they will find a link that provides an email address where they can email us directly their objection that will again be captured and recorded. So just to summarise, either through the consultation form and specific questions that exist and have existed from the start of the consultation, or directly via that Future Chippenham email address that exists to capture that objection. And again, that's been there in place since the beginning of the consultation. Because this question has been raised a number of times, we've taken the opportunity to put a frequently asked question on the consultation page at the very top to make sure that people are very clear in terms of how they can raise that objection if they want to.
Thank you very much, Simon, for that response. Looking down the list, I think I've got another one that I'm going to point in your direction, Simon, which is what will be done to ensure the residents of Chippenham can still access the countryside?
Yes, thanks, Richard. I think, current lockdown provisions because of the pandemic, we're all valuing the importance of access to the countryside and open space. We haven't included in this presentation the infographic which sets out the sort of overall milestones in terms of consultation. People will be aware we're currently consulting on road route options. After that, and once through the consultation, there's a preferred road route established, we'll be consulting on detailed master planning across the area, and part of that will be looking at the blue and green infrastructure network that will exist over potential development, ensuring that links are maintained or created to public rights of way, cycleways, canal towpath, the sort of thing that's been explained by Jamie and Tom this evening, and look at the location and scale of green space within development as well to make sure that they are protected.
Great, thanks for that, Simon. The next one looks like a question that is probably appropriate for Jamie from Atkins. Will there be any reassessment of the proposals for the new road, given the massive change to people's work commuting that is underway as a result of COVID? The rush hour commute and associated congestion will be significantly reduced in the future. I don't know, Jamie, whether you've got any observations on that.
Yeah, well, we certainly recognise that. Obviously, it's affecting everyone at the moment. So the transport assessment for the road planning application will certainly consider forecasts for all modes of transport and the impact of COVID-19. So that will certainly be considered. We need to remember that the road is not just for motor vehicles. It's a transport network enabling opportunities for travel by cyclists, pedestrians, buses and cars. So the reforecasting will be a reforecast of all modes of transport.
Okay, thanks Jamie. Another highways related question that I'll direct initially to you, Jamie, then I might bring in my colleague Steve, who's the council's work stream lead for the road delivery. And the question is, whichever route we end up with, will the route have pavements for safe pedestrian use, or will these be without pavements like Avenue La Flèche and Pewsham Way?
So the cross sections that we shared briefly earlier on the as part of this presentation, they include paved pedestrian and cycle routes. They will be paved, and there will be further focus on and a review of the public rights of way networks and an overall connectivity plan that will be developed as part of the master plans for the adjacent developments. So the short answer is yes, they'll be paved, but obviously a network of paved footways and cycleways as part of the overall master plan.
Thanks, Jamie. And Steve, do you want to give any of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I probably would. Clearly, Jamie showed cross sections within the presentation, and that sort of is clearly depicting the longitudinal connection along the route itself. But as Simon was alluding to earlier, the importance of access to the countryside clearly is very high on the agenda at the moment. So as this scheme is being developed, we need to look out from the road into the wider country to ensure that we've got connectivity with the wider public rights of way going out of town. And also, very, very importantly, the master plan needs to be thinking about connections into the town. So the whole question of footways, cycleways, public rights of way, it needs to be looked at sort of holistically, not just along the route itself, but as part of the wider scheme.
Great, thanks, Steve. And there's another question here, which I think, so I'll keep you on, that maybe you could give your thoughts on as well. And it relates to Chippenham and how other other comparable towns and comparable road schemes. And the question is, can you advise of any comparable sized market towns that have been surrounded or locked in by a de facto ring road?
Oh, I think my reaction to that question, Richard, really is the question seems to be sort of suggesting that we're trying to build a ring road here and sort of encapsulate Chippenham within a severance all the way around. That's not what we're trying to do. The distributor road as part of Future Chippenham really is it's envisaged that it's going to be part of the development. It's going to be integral to the development. It's not going to be a sort of border around the outside. So I think, I would actually sort of challenge that concept. That's not really what we're trying to achieve at all.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And I hope that the presentation that the team has given this evening will kind of reaffirm that intention, that this is about placemaking. It's not about creating a ring road in the traditional concept of ring roads in other locations. So thank you for that. And another question that is around the familiarity with the locality, and there's a questioner has said, have any of they said planning committee, but I'm going to interpret that as the programme team actually visited the Marden Valley. So I'm going to put that one to Simon, I think, if that's okay, Simon.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I actually think this is an important question because it drives at the issue that we raised at the very top of the meeting, the distinction between the consultation that we're taking part in now and presenting around road route options and the consultation that's taking place at the moment in relation to the local plan review. So I know a number of members of the Future Chippenham team will have visited proposed sites in the Marden Valley. Not really our place to talk in relation to the planning committee. That might feel quite strange to some of the people asking the questions, but it does emphasise there is a very clear distinction in the council between this programme and the planning committee and the local planning authority and the officers that support that.
Thanks, Simon. I think that's a very important point. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes left, and I've still got quite a few questions to go through, so I'll try and speed up. I've got a question, I think, which I'm going to direct at Steve, which is, why are all the options on the east side of Chippenham?
Oh, well, if the question's alluding to why are the road options all on the east side of Chippenham, then clearly Future Chippenham development area it lies in that vicinity, and the road that we're consulting on is to serve those developments. it may be, Richard, that actually the questioner is perhaps thinking more about the housing, and perhaps this is something that's would be better sort of directed to the local plan consultation, if the thought is, why is all the housing sort of being depicted through this consultation on the east side?
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think and that distinction between the purpose of this exercise and the wider local plan review, which is a separate thing, is, hopefully is a theme that's come out of the presentation this evening. Thank you. Question, I think, is one for Simon around the land, and I understand that much of the land in question is owned by Wiltshire Council. So how much money is the council set to gain from the sale of this land?
Thanks, Richard. Yes, well, we've already mentioned that the council has been successful in securing £75 million out of the government's housing infrastructure fund. As part of that, the council's had to enter into an agreement with Homes England, it's the government body that administers that, about how that money would be recovered if development took place. And the council, as part of that recovery strategy, has had to commit to land sales receipts and borrowing as part of that strategy. Now, clearly that information is commercially sensitive, so we can't share that. If a scheme does proceed, then obviously more detailed costs and phasing will become defined. And as that happens, then the council will be able to establish what the potential gain could be from any sale of land receipts. The important point that needs to be made over and above all of this is that that whole recovery strategy is premised on the basis that there is no cost to the council in relation to the recovery strategy of the funding.
Thank you, Simon. Time for a couple more questions. This one is around jobs and housing, and it says, you say the plan sets out to meet the need for jobs and housing. What jobs? You also talk about employment opportunities, but what exactly does that mean? And I'm going to address that question to Dave Milton, who's the master planning lead for the programme. Dave, if you could answer that for me.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. I think it's important to understand that as we move forward as proposers of the site, we'll be working on a detailed master plan. And that would include talking to our economic regeneration team and identifying what employment needs and gaps, but also importantly, what opportunities there are within Chippenham as a whole. We've already assessed capacity, and it's indicatively showing about 1 million square foot of commercial space if the development proceeds as possible. We need to work to investigate a deeper layer of that to find what sectors, what the market's like. There's no good just allocating employment if the market's not there. We really have to, in this post-COVID world, dig deep. But that is an important question, and it is one that we want to balance communities, as I said in my previous answer, one which matches homes, decent affordable homes for people, to jobs so they can work and live in the local vicinity.
Thanks, Dave. And there's another question. We've got time to maybe squeeze a couple more in, and I think this one is one that I will direct at Steve. It says you say this road will help us face some of the long-standing challenges such as town centre congestion, but studies conclude that building new roads increases congestion, especially where the thousands of houses are being built. Can you agree that this statement is factually incorrect? I always give you the nice easy one, Steve.
Thank you very much. Roads increase traffic. I think roads themselves, I would suggest, don't actually increase traffic. It's the development that comes alongside the roads that are increasing the traffic. Clearly, a scheme of this nature, which we'll be seeing housing coming forward and commercial use as well, there will be traffic generation associated with the new development, but it's not necessarily the roads themselves that sort of increase the traffic. What will have to happen is clearly there will be a full planning application, there'll be a planning process for this, there will be a full transport assessment that will need to come forward looking at the scheme overall, and that will look at the transport situation and identify what particular measures need to be taken. So that type of question will be dealt with through the planning process.
Thank you very much, Steve. Good, succinct answer, and really important that yes, this is going to be subject to a planning application in due course with all the appropriate submissions that will need to be made, and they will be tested and evaluated in the usual way. So I think we've got time for one very last quick question, which is a question that's come up several times, and it's around sustainable communities. And the question is, I understand that this consultation is specifically about the road, but in the video you mentioned sustainable communities. Can you please define what you mean by sustainable communities? I'm going to direct that again at my colleague Dave Milton. Dave. Dave, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, Richard. Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, sustainable communities have broad definitions, but I mean, in this instance, as I've alluded to before, it's about a planned community. So a community that's supported by essential infrastructure from the outset. It's supported by the roads, but also the power, the drains, the schools, the medical facilities. And so it promotes a more sustainable way of living. So actually people can live and meet their needs and receive the services they want in the local area without having to travel lots of many miles for those. It's also about having actually a very green community itself and building green. So things are energy efficient, use energy efficient materials, use energy efficient building techniques. You have a choice and a range of sustainable transport modes rather than just solely relying on the car. So, you know, it's about social equality, but opportunity, economic sustainability. There's a whole raft of stuff, but basically it's about trying to, again, boost that resilience and self-containment of Chippenham as a standalone settlement rather than a satellite to other bigger settlements.
Great. Thank you very much for that. We've run out of time. There are more questions, as I say, and there are questions that we will be providing written answers to. So I think it just leads me to sort of lead with some concluding remarks and say thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you found this evening's webinar interesting and helpful. A recording of the webinar is going to be available on the Council's YouTube channel very shortly. And just a reminder that more information and how to respond to the consultation is available on the Future Chippenham website, which can be accessed via the Wiltshire Council website. And we provided you with on the slide the website address. All consultations must be received by 5 p.m. on Friday, the 12th of March. And obviously the Future Chippenham team does welcome all feedback, both positive and negative. And it's an essential part of any consultation process that will inform ultimately the decision that's made on the selection of the preferred option. If you do have any further questions, please email futurechippenham@wiltshire.gov.uk. And also we'll be confirming details on our website via email and other social media of the further webinar on Saturday, the 20th of February at 11 a.m, which I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. That presentation, that webinar event is going to be more focused towards Q&A because we recognise that people have a lot of questions, and because there's so much information that we're trying to get over and convey, it can be difficult to balance the Q&A with the sort of formal presentation element. So we've put that in as a more Q&A oriented event on Saturday, the 20th of February at 11 a.m. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much for spending your time with us this evening. I hope you found this useful, and I do hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.